Okay, I'm excited to be adding to our sort of library on the West Coast affiliates, CrossFit West Coast page, so we can start to get more info out for our affiliates. I'm interviewing here Nick Olson. He is the owner of CrossFit Humanity in San Diego, California, and he bought the gym. This affiliate's been around for a while. I forget when they first opened.
Yeah, I think 11 years.
Yeah, so a bit long-standing gym out there in San Diego. But you bought the gym back in May of 22 and have been you started CrossFit prior to that, maybe 6, 7 years ago, and just decided I'm going to own a gym now. You're in software sales and now decided to shift gears. So interesting enough, because a lot of people will come into gym ownership through doing CrossFit and then maybe coaching CrossFit, running classes, getting a lot of, FaceTime with members and feeling like, I think I want to do this. This is what I want to do. I want to have classes for people. And so obvious, I should open a gym versus you were taking classes. Did you ever coach?
I only like subbed in like weird situations,
Okay.
but yeah,
So it
never.
wasn't your full-time gig ever to
Yeah.
coach. And then, but still really found something about CrossFit that got you excited, made you want to be a gym owner. But I think it's very cool that you have a background in sales and specifically in software sales, or your knowledge of how you look at things with the business may be different than someone who is a career coach, which I would consider myself a career coach. I
Right.
am also, I have to admit, a gym owner. It is a small gym, but I am a gym owner, but I don't look at myself the same way. I look at myself as a coach that happens to collect money from my clients,
Yeah.
right? So I really enjoyed when we spoke separately about just how you approach the business. And I really wanted to get your take on it. I think a lot of people could benefit. So I'll just, I'll preface it first with anything I say. If you're not comfortable answering, you're allowed to, of course, say pass or just kind of, only share what you're comfortable with. And also I'll just put this out there that, of course, anyone listening, this is just one way of doing things. Nick is not sharing on behalf of like what's right and everyone else is wrong. And he knows all. He's very humbly just said, I'd be happy to talk about this more and share. And we even talked about doing something that was a little interactive where people could hop on and ask questions. So if there is a demand for that, I know Nick would be happy to chat with people about some ways that he's approached his business. So really just the goal as an owner is increase revenue, decrease costs. It might not be on everyone's radar, but become a professional owner and not just someone that's constantly working inside the business and doing all the small minutia type of tasks. And the more affiliates that we can get doing those higher level things, the more successful these gyms are going to be. So what you're, straight from your mouth, you really said that kind of comes down to knowing your numbers, right? If you're going to be able to do that. So I'm curious, what software do you use first of all for your gym software?
Yeah, I use Wodify.
Okay. Because obviously there's tons out there and a lot of them do a lot of the same things. So even if someone doesn't use Wodify, they're going to get something close to what you got in terms of numbers and what they're pulling.
Yeah, for
And
sure.
when you talk about, the numbers that you're looking at, shoot, I was going to say monthly, but maybe daily, weekly. What are you looking at? What's most important when you pull that stuff up?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I think that that's the interesting thing is you have tools like Wodify that that do a pretty good job of pulling everything together. The problem is it's never really all that specific for your business. Like there's a lot of gym owners that don't really have an understanding of specifically how many members they have, right? They might say, oh, I have 150, but really 30 of them are free clients, right? It doesn't matter how many free clients you have, it matters how many paid clients you have, right? And so unless you have a really good pulse on that number, how do you know how to grow and kind of take it from there? And so, I mean, I do stuff by just by pulling reports of, revenue by membership and just adding up, you just go through and click on your 10 or 12 cells that include your members and you figure out what that number is for the month. I like to track to that number throughout the month. I think that unless you can have a little bit of a forecast for your business, how do you know how to manage your expenses? And then everything becomes kind of a guess. So, the big things that I'm looking at are membership revenue. I think, in a very fixed cost oriented model like we have, is you might spend 10, 20, 30K a month on your space, your, expenses, including payroll and things like that. And that membership revenue is that money that gives right back into it. And so if your classes aren't full, you should always be trying to add more people into that. And then you have your other channels of revenue. And I like to track those separately because the margins on them are always a little different. So you have things like merchandise, hopefully you're getting 40-50% margin. But then you have things like drop-ins, that's always great additional revenue. But it's a little different. We're right by San Diego Airport, so we're lucky enough to get a lot. But other locations do those a little bit differently. And then there's the stuff that you do to like develop professional coaches within your gym. So it's personal training, nutrition, maybe it's individualized programming. And that's the stuff that me as a gym owner, I don't actually do that stuff here at my gym. Whereas I think folks like yourself, Katie, probably like look to take those things on first. And I look at it as a way to say, how do I have channels of revenue where my coaches can actually make make a career out of this coaching thing.
Yeah,
And
because classes usually don't pay the rent.
they don't pay the rent. And as a
For,
gym owner,
for
although
the trainer. They may pay
yeah,
the rent for the owner, but they don't pay the rent for the trainer.
no, exactly. And that's kind of been my point is membership only earnings are for the owner, right? You're paying your expenses. You're trying to keep those as low as possible. Your other channels of revenue, those are for your coaches. And so you want it, or I want to try to build those up, not only because I like my coaches, but that's how I have really good professional staff in my gym, right? Like if you don't build those up, like you don't have the option to just pay people more for classes, or if that is what you want to do as an owner and you're paying a fair wage, then you're kind of giving money away, right? So that's kind of the way I look at it, and I track it pretty diligently. But I think really, if most owners did it, twice a month, on the 5th, when your money hits your bank account, kind of coming in from Wodify, and on the 25th to kind of know where you're wrapping up the month, people would have a lot better understanding of, where their business is at.
Yeah. When you're looking at, say you're pulling things like revenue per membership, does that indicate to you then that you're going to try to increase in specific memberships, or is that not really something you try to push or focus on, and it's really just going to be grown organically by whatever the client wants? So do you guys zero in on trying to increase one of those more than others?
Yeah. Certainly something we look at. So I look at membership ARM, so membership average revenue per member. And then I look at just like my total gym ARM, and total gym ARM is just a factor of revenue divided by number of members. And then the membership only is, adding up like specific membership revenue. I think both numbers are important because, if you're doing a little bit more stuff within the world of personal training, within programming and stuff like that, you're generating more revenue, and it's better for your coaches, but it's not the same as like the way the gym looks at it. And so I do look at membership average revenue per member. I'm a big fan of, you can take your pricing off your website, and then you can always raise your prices for incoming members. Like I think a lot of owners really stress about raising prices on current members. I think it's something that you need to do. Here in San Diego, we have a little higher churn because we're in kind of an urban market. But if it's something that you're thinking about, just test the market, go and say, okay, instead of 155, we're going to do 165. You don't have to change it for anyone, and no one at the gym has to know,
Right. And then if you're not getting people to actually sign up, then maybe you've priced yourself out a little bit, or need to add something to the gym to match what that value is, right?
Yeah, no, I think that's exactly right.
So when you look at these numbers, does that at all weigh into something like adding class times or dropping classes, or is that really just like, I really have to just go off of what my members need and numbers don't play a factor?
I think that's a great question. Something I don't have an answer for, but I've been looking at it
Oh,
more because
really?
we do 60 classes a week. So that's a lot, right? Like most gyms are going to be closer to 40 maybe.
Right.
And so from our perspective, we need to get bodies in the door in order to justify all those classes. It's really nice when you have a prospect come in, because I never get the objection that the class time doesn't work for them. So I wish I've kind of asked around to different owners and things. I wish there was maybe some like industry standard metrics around how many classes for how many members you should be targeting, or like, payroll and backing into it. I love metrics like that, but yeah, I
Having
personally think I have too many, but I don't know the answer.
Yeah, that's the tricky part, right? Having too many is already feels like a money suck in terms of payroll, but then you have to think, I wonder how many of my clients appreciate that flexibility, that they might come at 11 a.m., but then they also might come at 4 p.m. And you're like, that's so random. Like, how can I ever? And then twice a week they have to come at 6 a.m. just because that's just the way. And you're like, okay, I guess I got to have the whole gamut because I have a lot of people that flex all around. Um, that would be an interesting one to try to track. So when you're looking at numbers that you pull, how much of that is ready to go, just push, run report? And this is, I know I realize this is Wodify, and rather than, I can't say across every software, but how much do you feel like back end work you have to do once you get that report? And like either additional math or converting numbers or sort of layering one report over another to kind of do, what am I actually looking at? Like, because when you say like, oh, I have 200 members, okay, but 15 of them are my coaches, maybe that's a big staff. 8 of them are my coaches, which maybe you don't charge for membership. And then how are there maybe another several that are not paying or have some sort of an agreement going on? So what, like in general, with any metric, you can choose like maybe which metric, like what's the process for you to sort it out?
Yeah. I mean, honestly, it might be more detailed than you care, but it's like within Wodify, I pull 2 reports, right? And so I go in there, I go to reporting, I go to financial, and I go to revenue by month. And I just simply go and find that number, right? And so where is that number at for this month or the previous months? I go and put it into one column. And then I go to the report revenue by membership.
Mhm.
And I go and sort by the date. And so I go and do the specific date or the month. So for September, I would do that. And then I would literally just download those results, pull it into a spreadsheet, and drop it in. And from there, you literally just go and create a column and you just add up all the cells that are actual memberships. You got to be honest with yourself, right? I, for instance, count punch cards. I don't think everyone should or would
I was
want to
gonna
count.
ask about that. I've had members or coaches ask me like, do I count a punch card? And I'm like, well, whatever you do, you have to be consistent. So,
Yeah.
where do you draw the line? But that's a good, I'd love to hear more about your thoughts process on that.
Yeah, I mean, like I add up the meaningful sources of membership revenue, and at my gym, I do like 5 to 7 punch cards a month,
Mhm.
and it seems pretty consistent, right? So if I was a gym that did maybe like 21 month and 2 the next month, then it's going to make my number look wonky, and I want to look at that number a little bit differently. I could
Do
understand the
punch
argument.
cards expire? I don't know if they're even allowed to in our state.
Mine expires after 6 months. I
Okay.
don't fight people on it typically very hard, but just because
It's
I
more of an incentive, right? To say that. I say the same thing. I say, to be, I don't even know if I write the word expired, but I say meant to be used within, I either put like 4 or 6 months. Um, but it's more of like, if you're buying this punch card and you go away for a year, and go away doesn't mean that they're going on a business trip. For my clients, it's the parents just stop bringing the kid in or whatever it is. There's not, I
yeah.
know they're busy, but that's not going to be helpful for them to buy that. And so in that regard, if those punch cards are being consistently purchased, they are as good as a membership, right? If they get stretched across 3 months, you're kind of like scratching your head, like, how do I count this as a membership? So that I understand. But if
Yeah.
you have good parameters and checking in with clients that don't show up for a week or so, then I would agree that those punch cards should definitely count as membership, but good
Right.
thing to keep an eye on.
Yeah. No, I mean, I literally just add up all the different sources and then you add up all your different memberships, right? And so, like, I, for instance, have more sources of membership revenue than I would count as members. For instance, I do like hybrid AF. So I have the 24/7 access. And so I have membership revenue because that's like a $10 add on. And so I'd add that to my membership revenue, but those are not distinct and unique members, right? So that obviously doesn't get added. And so like I'd be happy to share with anyone how my spreadsheet gets put together. But I think at the end of the day, if you don't take the time to like really understand your own numbers, that's like the whatever spreadsheet you put together will be as beneficial as or as unbeneficial as like the effort you've put in to like really understand where you're at, right?
Yeah. This might be tough to answer because I get the feeling that you're someone that enjoys these numbers.
Right.
And kind of you
Yeah.
read spreadsheets like the Matrix, right? Like that's a very dated reference, but like that makes sense to you. And not this is nothing to do with intelligence, right? But I do think there are some people where that is it's like Greek to them, even though they can do math. It's not about math, it's not about understanding, but it is not something that draws them in. And they that maybe repulsion is causing them to like avoid some of these numbers. So any advice for either simplifying it in their mind, or you talked a little bit about a cadence, like you don't have to look at them every day. You don't even have to look at them every week, maybe a beginning of the month, end of the month, kind of a routine. You were talking about like the 5th and the 25th, or is this the kind of thing that, like, I don't know how to say like these are maybe to simplify in their brains so that they're pulling what they need and not anything that they don't. But
Right. For me, it's twofold. I think like there's a difference between like hard work and working smart, and there's a difference between like really good focused like mind share oriented work versus like sweeping the floors. And I think as a gym owner, as like a person in general, is like it's really good to understand like where you have your best mind share. Like 7 to 11 a.m. I can do good work. It's great for me to not be on calls at that point. It's great for me to not be coaching. It's great for me to not be mopping and sweeping the floors in my gym, because I know I can get good focused work done. And I think everyone has that to some degree. And that's where you need to take one of those days and really go through the numbers and understand and put together a little bit of a spreadsheet. And so I think mind share is really important to think about and understand, because so many gym owners out there work really hard, but are you working smart, right?
yeah, that's great. I didn't even think of that. And it's so true. And I would even take it one step further that there's often even days of the week, right? Depending on your schedule and your life and how stress builds, that are more or less optimal.
Yeah,
Some people Monday hit the ground running might be great, while other people, depending on what their family and social lives are like on the weekend, Mondays might be rough. Like maybe they don't really get to those. Maybe Tuesday is a good reset day, and Monday is the good day to do a little bit more of the mindless, right? Monotonous stuff because
yeah,
they're still coming off of like whatever was the weekend. And so that would be an interesting thing to be aware of for your own, like what is your routine and when it comes to being focused. And like you might know, if you're not sure, maybe it's when if you're someone that programs workouts and that's your best time to do it, that's probably a good time to do these kinds of numbers too, right? Like it's the same part of the brain that needs that focused work, in my opinion.
you're right.
um and
I wish I
yeah,
had more of it, but I don't. I
yeah,
mean, and don't waste that time,
it's
right?
finite.
Yeah,
Exactly. Don't waste it is a really good point. Yeah, I mean, right, leading up to a class, I would argue that that's not a good time for anyone because their part of their mind is on what they're about to go do, and so you have to have a nice buffer versus, maybe there's, little things around the gym that you could get done that have nothing to do with that focus work. That's a really good point.
I
Um,
I've always gotten a kick out of it. Like I used to coach 7:30, 8:30, 12:30, 3:30, and 4:30 one day a week on Thursdays. And it was
yeah,
amazing. You have a 3 hour and a 2 hour gap in there. You can't get anything done though. Like your brain, you can't turn off the coaching
yeah,
and go into focused work. And so I just
that
got
is
to where it's
so
like,
true.
okay, you clean. But 3 hours is a long time to like not be able to get something done. And that's probably partially on me, but like, isn't
No,
it? I mean,
that's
it's just an interesting thing.
I bet coaches could really relate to that, right? If they had something they had to get, or I know some coaches that are also like, part-time students, and they're like, you're like, well, couldn't you get some of that studying done you talked about? But they're like, I'm about to be back on in 2 hours. You're like, it's 2 hours away, but they're already in that mode.
Right. I think
We
the other
go
thing
ahead.
within that is like then really understanding your channels of revenue, right? So if you're going to break down your spreadsheet, and everyone's going to be a little different, right? But it's, for me, it's members and it's revenue, right? And then it's breaking down, how much merchandise did I sell, right? Like I can usually sell a couple grand every month. We do pretty well with Fit Aid. If I buy more shirts, we sell more shirts, not everyone's that way. Like pre-orders are great, but it's like for me, my goal today is $4 grand a month in merchandise to go out the door. That's pretty good. And
Yeah.
if I don't think about that as like a channel of revenue separately, that'll continuously degrade because I won't order the clothes and do things like that.
Right.
Then it's drop-ins. One of the things we did with drop-ins is we started doing drop-in plus a t-shirt, and so it's a discounted shirt. So way more shirts, but also started driving our average revenue per drop-in up. And so that was good. Personal training, right? That's one. I kind of always bucket that with nutrition because it's not something I do. It's something we pay out to coaches at a higher percentage, but you want to understand that separately. I think it's like personalized programming, kind of the same thing. And so for me, it's like breaking down each one of those channels. And then of course, membership only, because that's the one that I think you don't ever want to take your eye off, because if you're not bringing new people in the door, you're not building any of those other channels, right?
And you're only counting members that are actually paying, right? Any of those others are just not included in your total count.
Yeah. And for me, it's paying a significant amount. I have some that are on, grandfather deals or a buddy here or there. And but I mean, you just be honest with yourself, right? Like the numbers are only here to benefit the gym owner, right?
Yeah, it will just distort and confuse the more those kind of get added in.
Yeah.
When it comes to, I know a big goal of yours is to continually raise that revenue per month. And when it comes to you, how do you set goals for that for you for the long term? What kinds of things are you doing inside the business that can start to improve that? Because a lot of times, and this isn't wrong, but I think a lot of times gym owners are like, well, it's just very simple. I just need more people to come into my gym. And that is true in some regard, but I also realize that there's things we can be doing inside the business, whether it's, changing what we're offering or how we're offering it, changing our sales process for closing. Are you paying attention to how many leads are coming in and actually making it from email or clicks on the website or the form to stepping foot in the door? And like, what's the fall off is there? How much of that is things that you're tracking and controlling via spreadsheet or not? And how much of that is more so just like, I just go off of these numbers, once they're paying. I don't look at the front stuff.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I think the best thing I did is I joined a mentorship group. And so I joined Big Little Gyms, but of course there's other ones, there's stuff like Two Brain and Best Hour of Your Day. The thing that I really got out of that was like, you kind of live in an echo chamber as an owner in which you have members and coaches. And while it's not ill-intentioned, they're really only looking at how you can spend money for them or spend money on the gym, right? And so there's very little support for you as an owner to like really make that livable wage. And I think too much of the time us as owners get caught in this cycle where it's like, oh, they're my friend, I got to give them a discount. But the reality of it is like, if somebody's really your friend and they want to cancel mid-month and get a refund, like, it doesn't mean they weren't your friend, but like, it's a two-way street. And I think a lot of people need to internalize that a little bit better. From a sales process standpoint, I think that's something everyone wants to like document and understand. There's different tools out there. I personally don't think we've really nailed that. We've gotten pretty good with some of like the digital marketing, as well as just like, get your Google listing. So many of us gyms have been around for a long time. Google loves it when you've been around. That's a big part of what Big Little Gyms teaches, is getting your website set up in a way that it's going to drive search engine optimization, and then getting your Google set up in a way that it's going to drive leads, right? And so like, if you have more Google reviews, if you have a more complete profile, if you're posting to it consistently, Google likes all those things and starts to kind of promote you up the list. And so if you do those things well, you get more people, and then it's all a funnel, right? So it's like, you get more impressions from Google, you get more website visits. And if you have more website visits and your website is good, you get more leads coming through. And then from there, it's how many people are you setting for an appointment or whatever your next step in your process is. And then how many are actually showing up to that appointment, right? And then from there, how many are you converting? And I think sometimes those numbers are a little painful to look at. Those things are fun to look at as the gym's growing, and it's hard to look at when you're not doing as well. But it's really being honest with yourself and understanding Like for instance, I've been taught that the industry average is, 5 to 10% of your website should be converting to a lead. So if you get 400 people, you should be getting 20 to 40 leads. Of those, 50% should set for an appointment. So you should be getting 20 for an appointment. 70% should show up. So this is where the math gets tricky, but like you're talking about from 40 down to 20 down to 16 or something, or 14. And then of that 80% who actually, or 70% that showed up, so the 14, about 80% of them should close, right? And so you're talking about 10 new customers from 400 website visits. And then
Which sounds bad, but it's not.
no, yeah. But if you don't even understand how many web visits you have, how do you
Yeah.
understand how you're going to drive that whole funnel, right? And I think that's where it gets a little intimidating.
You won't know where in the chain needs to be fixed. If
Yeah.
you're not getting 10 signups, you don't know if it's because you're not pulling 400, or if it's because you're once they get to your site, they don't know how to get a hold of you. It's meaning it takes too long to get to the click here situation. Maybe they clicked here and then the response time was too slow. And so they were really eager and excited. I've been really inspired the more people I've talked to in and out of the industry about response time. And again, I'm a real small shop, but I got a lead, if you will, but it was a referral. So it's much easier in that situation. Texted me yesterday and I tried to respond within, 2 minutes from it popping up, to just be like, yeah, let's get you in, and gave the gal some details, and made an appointment. Excuse me. And so something that I'm being mindful of now, even though my funnel is much smaller respective too. So.
Yeah. No, I mean, I heard somewhere something like companies that respond within 5 minutes versus an hour, which an hour is still pretty quick to respond to somebody.
It's pretty good.
It's like
Maybe coaching class, right?
I think it's like hundreds of times more revenue they make. So I heard
Those are
like
things I've heard too.
yeah. And I set up an automation at one
I was
point.
gonna ask, do you guys have some?
Yeah, so through the big little gyms, they have a great like CRM system that they share with everyone. And I think it's the thing that makes the program the most valuable, right? So it's a combination of mentorship and, it's just, I think mentorship more than anything, it's just like, don't reinvent the wheel, right? Like tons of people have done it a certain way, try it their way, make it your own. But like, I banged my head against the wall, trying to get different programs set up in kind of a janky sort of way. And, you have that. And then they have this CRM system where they set it up and help you to optimize those things. And then there's automations that you can kind of put in place and things like that to respond. But really it's just, I think you just got to pick up the phone and
That's
bother.
the one to catch them within a minute while
Yeah.
you're coaching, or in the car or whatever it may be. And then the very next response is you or whoever's in charge of it. And now they're hearing a real person. And if your automation is, crafted appropriately for your gym and your energy and your vibe, it will, while it may sound automated, it won't be hard to, like, it will still be welcoming. It will still be okay. That was an automated, and then your voice coming in next will be either, like you said, a phone call or a secondary text response to get them, a real person. And I think that's fine. I feel that way. If I'm asking for help on a chat, I know the first thing is a bot.
Yeah.
But they're like, and they'll even say like, ... I'm getting you a person. And then instantly that person is there and it's fine. I got to write all of my problems to the bot. And then now the person got to read it and now they're talking to me. And so I think it's the same thing. So anyone that's averse to that, like, don't worry, you're going to jump into.
That's a great point. Don't you think like people are used to a bot coming in? I think the thing that bothers people is when you try to act like it's not a bot kind of thing.
Yes, exactly.
And it's like, no, just give me your fitness background, right? Like give me context and I'll jump in when I get a moment. And yeah.
Yeah. And knowing, and then, yeah, I completely agree. If you can make it as not body as you want, people are still going to be okay with it. It's more of if you keep it going, that's where it's going to be hard. Or all of your emails are the same. It's totally fine to have your email series. But I really try with my newsletters, not just to affiliate owners, but also to my members of the gym, to include these personalized bits so that people are like, they're not just getting, these sort of canned things. They're getting my thoughts, my feelings. And I think that's where you make those connections.
Yeah. Oh, I would imagine most.
Someone forwards that to a friend and says, this is my gym owner, you should come try out a class, then they're reading my thoughts and my vibe. So that's something to consider as well.
Yeah, I was gonna say, as you and most gym owners probably do that far better than I am capable of, because you have that background with the clients, right? And so like, I think it's being sincere to your personality. And I guess if your personality's terrible, then I don't
Lean
know.
on someone in your business that you can be that face for you then.
Yeah, right.
Maybe it's a coach now. Well, this is awesome. Is there any other things, I didn't want to cut you off, any other things you wanted to share kind of about your process, or things you wanted to impart on people, or where you see them struggle and wish they wouldn't?
Yeah. I think like the biggest thing, kind of the reason I had reached out to talk about this a little bit more, is kind of coming from the enterprise tech space. I didn't find a ton of value in what I was doing. And so getting into the world of CrossFit has been so much more rewarding. I have a little bit different flavor on it than the average owner, but I think like the overarching concept is always that we want to help people. And so I want to help other gyms, and I want to, the more gyms that do well, the more people are impacted. And Don has kind of talked about that in some recent podcasts. And so it's like, if I can be of help to anyone, reach out. I'm happy to help. To me, that's kind of like the impact I can make in the world of fitness. And it's a little different than some people, but kind of own it.
Because if you can help a gym succeed, then they get to help more people, right? And it's all about extending our reach and in our own ways, making the world better, right? It's
Yeah.
not to wake up in the morning and feel like you have a purposeful sort of goal that day and in your life, and making someone's day better, even if it's helping them get a double under or balance their spreadsheet so that they can
Yeah.
decode it.
No,
So
exactly. I think that's the point.
well, I really appreciate it. I'm gonna kind of float this out into YouTube for our region. And if people have follow-up questions, please feel free to put them in the comments. You can email me. I can make sure you get a hold of Nick. I'm sure you could also find him through CrossFit Humanity as well. And if people would like, we could always do a call where there's a little more interaction, people asking questions, and help me read this spreadsheet for me. But anyway, thanks so much for your time, Nick.
Yeah.
And we'll catch you on the next one.